My name is Martina Proctor, and I was 29 years old when my boyfriend told me calmly and without hesitation that if I was going to be jealous every time he went out, I should just leave. He didn't shout. He didn't slam doors. He said it the way someone offers a reasonable solution to a problem they've already decided isn't worth fixing. The suitcase lay open on our bed, a black hollow, swallowing folded shirts and pressed jeans that still smelled like my laundry detergent. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching him move around the room with that restless pre-vacation energy, half excitement, half impatience. "You're sure it's just you and the guys I asked?" My voice was calm, not accusing. A checkpoint. "For the fifth time, yes," Ryan said, not looking up. "It's a guy's trip. Vegas. You know the plan." I did know the plan. I also knew his ex-girlfriend Melissa had commented fire emojis on his Instagram post announcing the trip. I knew another woman from his gym was staying at the same hotel, and I knew he hadn't mentioned any of that unless I asked the exact right question. "I just think it's strange," I said carefully. "Same hotel, same weekend. People you have history with." He stopped packing, just for a second. Then he laughed a short, humorless sound. "God, Martina. This is exactly what I'm talking about," he said, finally turning to face me. "You're always doing this, reading into everything, making things weird." "I'm not making anything weird," I replied. "I'm asking for respect." "Respect," he scoffed. "You want control. That's what this is." The word landed heavier than he intended. Control. Like I was a warden instead of the woman who paid half the rent, cooked most of the meals, and quietly reorganized her life around his ambitions. "I trust you," I said. "I just don't trust the situation." "Well, that's not my problem," he snapped, zipping the suitcase shut. "I'm not going to live my life tiptoeing around your insecurities." The room felt smaller, tighter. Then he said it. "If you're going to be jealous every time I go out and have fun?" He shrugged, already reaching for his phone. "Just leave." The sentence hung there clean and sharp. Not a threat, not a challenge. An instruction. Something in me went quiet. Not broken, muted, like someone had turned off the background noise of my life and left only clarity behind. He mistook my silence for defeat. "Think about it while I'm gone," he added softer now, almost patronizing. "Maybe you'll realize how unfair you're being." He rolled the suitcase past me, already gone in his mind. At the door he paused, expecting tears, pleading, a fight. Instead I met his eyes and said evenly, "Okay, enjoy your trip." He blinked confused by the lack of drama, then smiled satisfied. "See, that's better." The door clicked shut, and in the silence he left behind, I finally understood something I hadn't before. He thought he'd won. The apartment felt different the moment the door closed behind him. Not emptier, clearer, like a room after smoke has finally cleared and you can see the damage without coughing. I stood where I was for a long minute, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic below, the faint echo of his last words still bouncing around the walls. Just leave. He'd said it like a dare he was certain I wouldn't take, like he knew me well enough to bet on my hesitation. I walked to the window and watched him load his suitcase into the rideshare. He didn't look back, not once. His phone was already in his hand, thumbs moving, probably texting the guys, probably already halfway to Vegas in his head. When the car pulled away, there was no dramatic swell of grief, no sobbing collapse, just a steady, unfamiliar calm settling into my chest. I remembered the first time we'd talked about trips like this back when we still spoke in we. He'd said he loved that I was low drama, that I trusted him, that I wasn't like his ex-girlfriend, always suspicious, always picking fights. I'd taken that as a compliment. I see now it was a warning label I ignored. I picked up my phone. His Instagram story sat right at the top of my feed, like it was waiting for me. Airport bar, plastic cups raised. The caption read, "Vegas with the boys. No bad vibes." I was already being cast as the bad vibe. The problem. The weight he'd shaken off. I tapped to the next clip. There she was, Melissa, leaning into the frame like she belonged there. Too comfortable, too familiar. Her hand brushed his arm as she laughed, her head tipped back the way it used to be when she wanted attention. Another woman from the gym stood close on his other side. Same hotel, same weekend. Same story he'd dismissed as my imagination. I didn't feel jealousy. That surprised me. What I felt was confirmation, quiet, factual, almost boring. Like checking a weather app and seeing rain exactly when it was predicted. I closed the app. He told me to leave. Not we should talk. Not you're overreacting. Not. Let's figure this out when I get back. He'd offered me an exit like it was mercy. like I should be grateful for it. Fine. I went to the bedroom and pulled my old duffel bag from the closet, then the moving boxes we'd never bothered to unpack from our last move. I worked slowly, deliberately, as if following instructions I'd memorized long ago. I packed my clothes first, the ones I bought, the ones I washed. I left the hangers behind. I took my books from the shelves, dog-eared paperbacks from college, the hardcovers with my name written inside the front cover. I lifted the framed photo of my parents from the dresser, wrapped it carefully in a sweater. I unplugged my laptop, coiled the charger neatly. My headphones, my journal, the small, ordinary artifacts of a life that had apparently been optional. In the kitchen, I boxed my cookware, the good pan he always used, and never cleaned properly the knife I'd sharpened myself. I left the chipped mugs he loved. I left the blender he'd insisted we needed. I left everything that was his or ours in the way that really meant his. In the bathroom, I cleared my side of the sink. Toothbrush, skincare, makeup. I left his cologne. The half-empty bottle of shampoo he swore was basically unisex. It felt less like theft and more like restoring order, returning objects to their rightful owner. Hours passed. The light shifted across the floor. I didn't eat. I didn't put on music. The only sounds were tape-ripping cardboard folding the dull thud of boxes being sealed. With every box, my chest felt lighter, not happier, just unburdened. Like I was taking off a coat I'd been wearing in the wrong season. The final step was simple. I placed his spare key on the bare kitchen counter. I tore a sheet of printer paper from the stack we kept for bills and returns. I wrote 2 words clean and centered in my neat, careful handwriting. Took your advice. No explanation. No accusation, no signature. I propped it against the key and looked around the apartment one last time. It echoed now, stripped down to its essentials. It wasn't my home anymore. It was a stage after the actors had left. I called a storage facility and paid 3 months up front. Then I drove across town to my older sister's place. She opened the door, took one look at my face and the duffel bag at my feet, and stepped aside without asking a single question. "Guest room's yours," she said. "You hungry?" Later that night, lying in a bed that wasn't shared, I didn't replay the argument. I didn't wonder if I'd overreacted. The decision had already settled into my bones. He'd given me terms. All I'd done was agree. Ryan landed on Sunday night. I knew the exact time because I still had access to the shared calendar. One of those quiet details he'd never bothered to clean up, assuming I wouldn't notice or wouldn't care. 8:17 p.m. His return flight. He probably expected to walk back into the apartment, toss his keys on the counter, and launch into a rehearsed explanation about how fun but exhausting the trip had been. Maybe he'd even bring back a peace offering, a hoodie, a bottle of something overpriced. Proof that he'd thought of me. Instead, he walked into silence. At 8:26 p.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Once, twice, then again longer this time, a call. I watched the screen light up with an unknown number. I didn't answer. The buzzing stopped, then started again. A minute later, short, sharp vibrations like a pulse, finally realizing something was wrong. My sister looked over from the couch. "You expecting someone?" "No," I said and meant it. The buzzing stopped. A voicemail notification appeared. Then another call. I picked up the phone, accepted it, and set it face down on the table without speaking. "Martina." His voice was sharp-edged with irritation and something close to panic. "What the hell is going on?" I stayed silent. "The power's out," he continued, pacing audibly. "Why is the power out? And the internet?" "Martina, this isn't funny. Where is the TV? Where's the router? You can't just do this." There was a pause. I could hear his breathing now, faster, uneven. The realization setting in piece by piece. "You left," he said, finally, disbelief creeping in. "You actually left." The call disconnected. My sister raised an eyebrow. "That him?" I nodded. The text started almost immediately. "Unknown Martina, it's me. This is insane. I come home and half the apartment is empty. You need to call me right now." I deleted it. 5 minutes later, unknown. "Seriously, I'm worried about you. This is extreme. Are you okay? Where are you staying? We need to talk like adults." The tone shift was almost impressive, anger sliding neatly into concern, as if flipping a switch. I didn't reply. That night I slept better than I had in weeks. In the morning, there were more messages, calls from different numbers. He was borrowing phones now, trying to get around the blocks I'd already put in place. "Unknown, please. I made a mistake. The trip wasn't what you think. Melissa is just a friend. You know that. Unknown." I didn't mean what I said. I was stressed. You know how I get. Please just talk to me. Then the reinforcements arrived. A text from his sister Lena. Lena Martina, what is wrong with you, Ryan, is devastated. You can't just abandon someone like that. He needed space, not this. Call him and fix it. I stared at the message for a long moment. The familiar pressure, the expectation that I'd be the reasonable one, the fixer. The woman who smoothed things over so everyone else could stay comfortable. I blocked the number. Ryan's panic escalated as the hours passed. I could almost map it out without seeing the messages, him walking from room to room, noticing the gaps, the missing furniture, the dead outlets, the absence of my things, the quiet infrastructure of his life that had apparently been invisible until it was gone. He'd wanted freedom. This was it. By the second night, the tone had changed again. Unknown. I'm sitting on the floor right now. I don't even know where you went. This is cruel, Martina. I can't eat. I can't sleep. Please come home. I imagined him there, alone in the dark apartment, realizing how much noise I used to make without trying. Typing, cooking, moving through space like I belonged there. The thought didn't bring me satisfaction, just a distant clinical acknowledgement. This wasn't revenge, it was consequence. He had told me to leave if I had a problem. I had a problem, so I left. And for the first time since I'd met him, I wasn't waiting for his response. By the third day, Ryan stopped pretending this was about my mental state and started admitting what he was really afraid of. Money. The text came faster now, sharper around the edges. Unknown. I called the power company. The account was in your name. Why would you cancel it? I had to pay a reconnection fee. Do you know how embarrassing that was? I smiled at that, not because I enjoyed his discomfort, but because it confirmed something important. He hadn't noticed whose name was on the bills. He'd just assumed the lights came on because that's what they did, like I always did. Another message followed minutes later. Unknown. Also the internet, really. That's petty, Martina. Petty. The word men love to use when women stop providing invisible labor. I deleted it. That evening my phone rang again. A number I didn't recognize, but the area code told me exactly who it was. I answered. Martina, Ryan said, his voice quieter now, stripped of its edge. I'm sorry. Okay, I shouldn't have said what I said. I was stressed about the trip, about work, about everything. I didn't mean it. I leaned back against my sister's kitchen counter, watching the kettle begin to steam. You meant it enough to say it, I replied calmly. There was a pause. I just needed space, he said. That's all. Not this. Not disappearing. You asked me to leave. I didn't think you actually would. He admitted, frustration bleeding through. I thought you'd cool off. We'd talk when I got back. That's how couples work. That's how you wanted it to work, I said. On your terms. He sighed heavily. Melissa being there didn't mean anything. You didn't tell me she'd be there. It would have just started another fight. So you hid it. Silence. I'm staying with my sister, I continued. I'm not coming back. The shift was immediate, apology evaporating, replaced by irritation. So that's it, he snapped. You're just going to throw 3 years away without even trying. I almost laughed at that. Trying had been my full-time job. Before I could respond, another call came in. I ignored it. Then a text. Lena Martina, this has gone far enough. You're humiliating him. People are asking questions. There it was. The real issue. Not heartbreak, not regret. Image. I blocked her too. The next message from Ryan came hours later, and it finally dropped the act. Unknown. You know I can't afford the apartment alone. My credit isn't great. If you don't come back, I'm screwed. There it was, the confession hidden beneath all the noise. He didn't miss me. He missed the structure I provided, the safety net, the shared burden that made his life easier. I set the phone down and went for a run. The air felt different outside, cooler, sharper. Each step loosened something in my chest I hadn't realized was tight. When I got back sweaty and clear-headed, there were more messages waiting. Unknown. Please, just talk to me. I'll do anything. I'll block Melissa. I'll stop going to that gym. I'll go to therapy. Too late. Not because the offers weren't tempting, but because they'd come only after consequence. Change offered. As currency, not growth. That night I slept deeply. No dreams. No rehearsed arguments looping in my head. Just rest. He was unraveling, and I was moving on. I didn't open the dating app because I was lonely. That surprised me. I opened it because for the first time in a long while, my life felt quiet in a way that wasn't empty. There was space, and I wanted to see what it felt like to fill that space with something that didn't come preloaded with tension and history. I updated my profile with a recent photo my sister took of me on our morning run. No filters, no strategic angles, Just me, flushed and smiling, sunlight caught in my hair. I wrote a short bio, nothing clever, nothing defensive. I wasn't auditioning for approval anymore. Within an hour, I matched with Daniel. He was a civil engineer, liked hiking black coffee and terrible science fiction movies. His messages were easy, unforced. No testing the waters, no probing for emotional weak spots, just conversation. When he asked if I wanted to grab a drink that evening, I hesitated for exactly 2 seconds. Sure, I typed. I could use something normal. We met at a small bar with a patio strung with warm yellow lights, the kind of place where people talked instead of shouting over bass-heavy music. Daniel stood when he saw me, smiled, like he was genuinely glad I'd shown up, and asked how my day had been. It shouldn't have felt revolutionary. It did. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. I didn't pick it up. I flipped the phone face down and returned my attention to Daniel, who was explaining why the sequel to a notoriously bad sci-fi movie was secretly brilliant. I laughed, actually laughed, and felt something loosen in my chest. The phone buzzed again, longer this time, a call. Daniel's eyes flicked to it, then back to me, polite and unintrusive. Everything okay? Yeah, I said and meant it. I silenced the phone. Sorry. Where were we? We talked for 2 hours. About work, about travel, about how cilantro ruins everything it touches. The conversation didn't require vigilance. I didn't have to monitor my tone or preemptively soften my opinions. I just existed. When we walked out into the night air, he asked if he could kiss me. He didn't assume. He didn't rush. I said yes. The kiss was brief, gentle, and complicated. No promises attached. As I drove back to my sister's place, my phone buzzed again. I didn't check it until I was home, shoes kicked off, hair pulled loose. The screen was full. Unknown. I saw you were online, so you can ignore me, but not your phone. Unknown. Are you seriously out right now? After everything. Unknown. This is cruel, Martina. You're punishing me. Punishment. As if I'd engineered his discomfort rather than simply stepping out of its way. The last message of the night landed harder. Unknown. I called the landlord. If you don't come back, I have 2 weeks to figure something out. I hope you're happy. I set the phone on the charger and went to bed. His crisis was not my responsibility. The next morning, the tone shifted again, sharper, meaner. Unknown. You were never enough anyway. You think I wanted to settle? Melissa has ambition. She pushes me. You just wanted stability. There it was. The truth finally surfacing once the apologies failed. Stability reframed as inadequacy. Reliability turned into boredom. I took a screenshot, not to send to anyone, just to remind myself if I ever doubted this choice exactly who he was when he stopped pretending. I went for another run, applied for apartments, ate lunch with my sister, and talked about paint colors like my future wasn't radioactive. By the time evening came, Ryan's messages had slowed. The silence felt earned. I wasn't moving on to hurt him. I was moving on because I finally could. Ryan didn't disappear when the apologies stopped working. He escalated. The next message came from a number I didn't recognize, but the tone was unmistakable, sharper, more venomous, stripped of the soft edges he'd tried to wrap around his regret. Unknown, fine. You want to play this game? Let's be honest then. You were always holding me back. I stared at the screen, oddly detached. This was the version of him I'd only seen in flashes before, usually late at night, usually after a drink or two, usually followed by a half-hearted apology the next morning. Now it was unfiltered. Unknown. You think Daniel, or whatever his name is, wants you long-term. He doesn't even know you. He hasn't seen how controlling you get. Controlling. There it was again. The word he used whenever I asked for transparency, whenever I noticed patterns, whenever I refused to swallow discomfort just to keep the peace. Another message followed immediately. Unknown. You think you're winning right now, but you're just proving you can't handle real relationships. You ran instead of fighting. I set the phone down and took a breath. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed something essential. This wasn't about love. It never had been. It was about dominance, about control disguised as independence. An hour later, my phone rang. This time it was my mother. Martina, she said carefully. I just got a call from a very upset young man named Ryan. Of course he'd gone there. I closed my eyes. What did he say? That you abandoned him, she replied. That you took things, left him in financial trouble, and that he's worried you're not, well. I felt something spark then, not anger for myself, but a protective fury for her. Dragging my family into this wasn't desperation. It was strategy. I explained calmly. The trip, the ultimatum, the note, the empty apartment he'd walked into because he'd told me to leave. When I finished, my mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "So you did exactly what he asked?" "Yes." "Well," she said firmly, "then he has no one to blame but himself. I'll block his number." "Are you okay, sweetheart?" I swallowed. "I am. Actually, I really am." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, letting that sink in. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't cruel. I was done. That night, Ryan tried one last angle. A voicemail. His voice was different now, flat, exhausted, stripped of performance. "I'm losing the apartment," he said quietly. "I can't afford it alone. I have 2 weeks. I just thought you should know." There was a pause, a breath. "I didn't think you'd really leave." That was the truest thing he'd said since this began. I didn't call him back. Some realizations don't require a response. The call came late Friday night. I almost didn't answer, not because I was afraid of what he'd say, but because I already knew. There was nothing left to clarify, nothing left to negotiate. Still, something in me recognized the moment for what it was, the last attempt. I answered and didn't speak. "Martina," Ryan said quietly. No anger this time, no edge, just something hollow, like a room that's been stripped bare. "I got your note, took your advice." I leaned against the window, watching headlights pass below. That's all it needed to say. A shaky breath. "After 3 years, that's it." "You told me to leave," I said evenly. "I had a problem, so I did." Silence stretched between us long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. "Then I'm losing the apartment," he whispered. "I can't qualify on my own. My credit." He stopped himself. "I have to be out in 2 weeks." I said nothing. "Aren't you going to say something?" His voice sharpened, suddenly. Panic cracking through. "Aren't you even a little sorry?" There it was, the real demand. Not help, not reconciliation. Participation. He needed me to feel bad so he could feel justified. "No," I said. The word landed cleanly. Final. There was a small broken sound on the other end of the line. Not quite a sob, more like disbelief collapsing in on itself. "Who are you?" he asked, genuinely bewildered. I thought about that for a moment. About the woman who used to shrink herself to keep things calm, who confused compromise with silence, who mistook being chosen for being valued. "I'm the person who listened," I said. "Goodbye, Ryan." I ended the call. I didn't block the number. I didn't need to. He wouldn't call again. The conversation was finally over because I'd stepped out of it. 2 weeks later, I was at Sunday brunch. That alone would have sounded impossible a month earlier. Me at a sunlit cafe, laughing easily, not checking my phone every 5 minutes, not bracing for the next emotional shift. The place was busy and warm, all clinking glasses, and low conversation, the smell of coffee and citrus drifting through the open windows. Daniel sat across from me, telling a story with his hands the way people do when they're fully present. We'd seen each other a few more times since that first drink. No pressure, no labels. Just ease. The kind of ease I'd forgotten relationships could have. I was mid-laugh when I felt it. That subtle shift in the air, the sense of being watched. I looked up. Ryan stood at the edge of our table. He looked smaller. Not disheveled, not dramatic, just diminished. Like someone whose certainty had been quietly dismantled. His hair was pulled back without care, his jacket a size too thin for the morning chill. His eyes went straight to me, burning with a mix of desperation and something close to fury. "Martina," he said. "Not a greeting, a claim." Daniel's voice trailed off. He looked from Ryan to me, questioning but calm. I gave him a small, apologetic smile, the kind that said, "This will be brief." "Ryan," I replied evenly. His eyes flicked to Daniel for the first time, then back to me. "We need to talk. Now." "We've already talked," I said, lifting my coffee and taking a slow sip. "There's nothing left." "You left me with nothing," he hissed, his voice rising despite himself. A few nearby tables glanced over. "You ghosted me. You ruined my life. I have to move out. I'm starting over because of you." I set the cup down gently. "Because of your choices," I corrected. He laughed sharply. "You're really going to pretend you're innocent. You were supposed to fight for me. When I said leave, you were supposed to beg. That's what people do when they love each other." There it was. The script he'd written for me. The role I'd refused to play. I did love someone. I said, my voice steady, carrying just enough to be heard. But the person I loved didn't tell me to leave when I asked for respect. His mouth opened, closed. His gaze darted to Daniel again, taking in the relaxed posture, the lack of tension, the absence of drama. Daniel didn't interrupt. He didn't posture. He simply stayed where he was present, but not threatened. That more than anything seemed to unnerve Ryan. "So that's it," Ryan asked quietly now. "You just replace me and move on." "I didn't replace you," I said. I listened to you. For a moment, he just stood there, stripped of his angles. The insults didn't come, neither did the tears. Only the realization that this confrontation wasn't going the way he'd imagined. There was no explosion, no breakdown, no closure he could control. I don't even recognize you, he said finally. That's because you never really saw me, I replied. I turned back to Daniel, my voice warming as it re-entered the life I was actually living. Sorry about that. You were saying something about the waffles. Daniel smiled, picked up the thread without hesitation. Salted caramel. Legendary. But it's a commitment. I laughed, a real one, unforced. Behind us, Ryan lingered for a second longer, then turned and walked away. I didn't watch him go. I didn't need to. He was already receding into a version of my life that no longer existed. We finished brunch, split the check, stepped out into the bright afternoon together, talking about a movie we might see later. As Daniel held the door open, I caught our reflection in the glass, two people moving forward unburdened. No ghosts, no echoes, just the present. Ryan had